And welcome to the Specialty Matcha Podcast. My name is Ryan. This is my co-host Zongjun, who also goes by Sam.
Hello, hello.
And we're the co-founders of Psycho Matcha Products.
Yeah, we launched this podcast to discuss our learning journey, Matcha, share startup stories, and interview experts.
And this is our first episode, I think, dedicated to Chinese matcha or Chinese mocha specifically. So we've been slowly gathering up context, and we've talked about it on a lot of episodes here and there. But this is our first compilation of everything that we've learned about the Chinese matcha scene now in 2026.
That's right. And we kind of see this as a great occasion because right now we are sitting in the venue of Canton Fair, which is one of the largest and oldest exportation fair expo in China, which basically they sell anything from robotics to ceramics to utensils to like food stuff like oil, cereals, and obviously tea.
Yeah.
So it's been a pretty interesting experience so far. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah. Well, the size is enormous. Like the amount of trade that must go on in the world here is just a little mind-boggling.
Yeah. I mean, this is like the epitome of made in China.
Indeed. And we have been talking with both Chinese tea and matcha like aggregators, like third parties that are basically merchants that source from different farmers. We've also talked to merchants. Sam's been on the ground in Hubei to meet people who are doing matcha cultivation. And of course, we've had all of this matcha experience in Japan. So we thought this is a fine occasion this is by no means a comprehensive guide, but this is about everything that we know when it comes to the matcha scene here in China. Before we jump in, we are going to take the least conservative definition of matcha. So if you are on Team Japan, Team Heritage, and that you don't consider any other product that's matcha-like, even if it comes from Japanese cultivars and has been shaded and processed on traditional Japanese tencha processing equipment. But if you're the type of person that believes it has to be grown in Japan to be considered matcha, we totally respect that. For this conversation, we are going to use the word matcha and refer to it as Chinese matcha, just for simplicity's sake. That is how it is sold, and it has the sensory and organoleptic characteristics of matcha. A lot of these samples that we just tasted today here at the Canton Fair, if you tasted it, you would have no idea it was a Chinese product. And some of them you would immediately taste it and think, okay, wow, actually, this is a little different, which is really worth getting into as well.
So, I mean, it's really for our convenience to carry on the conversation because even by the definition we are trying to advocate, this should really be called Chinese matcha instead of Chinese matcha because very surprisingly, a lot of the cultivars we end up seeing today are not Japanese. They are all Chinese cultivars. Yeah. Actually, very few Japanese cultivars we were being told that was used in all of these products we end up trying.
Now, there's some selection bias. It is Canton Fair. And there's been a lot of Japanese cultivars too, as well, from different people we've been talking to over the past 2 years.
Yeah. But the landscape is pretty interesting, I think, to begin with, because I've been to a lot of these food conferences in China. And for all of the tea sessions, it's always Chinese tea, like leaf tea, loose leaf tea, if these conferences are domestic focused. And Canton Fair is one of the very interesting food conferences that you have to be a foreign or foreign related procured to participate as a visitor. And here, we were seeing every booth in the tea section selling matcha.
Yeah, nearly. It was
pretty amazing.
And we got to talk to everyone, actually, I think, except there's only one stand that we missed that was selling matcha here. Before we jump into sort of the status quo. Obviously, matcha has its origins in China to some extent when the Song Dynasty China was doing its matcha ceremonies and competitions, and then when it spread to Japan. And then China went through, 700 to 800 years of history of no matcha and no mocha. A lot of the vendors here take a very convenient stance that China's been making mocha here and has a very long heritage. And it uses this as marketing and selling a lot of this material, especially the stuff that comes out of Zhejiang and the areas in and around Hangzhou, which is famous originally for Longjing, but they definitely are borrowing this very convenient legacy. Now, of course, if you look at matcha as a product and its sensory properties, its color, its taste, this was invented in Japan. Everything that we all know of as matcha comes from shaded cultivation and Japanese agricultural practices, which we are now seeing the great pendulum swift shift back to China. Because when you ask any of these vendors, how long have you been making matcha, including the people that are trying to make this Song Dynasty Thai, they say, oh, 3 years
Yeah,
or 9 years.
2017.
Very recent. The oldest one that we met today was started in 2017.
Mm.
So let's get that out of the way too, is that all contemporary production of Chinese matcha is new.
Mm.
It is not a long culture. It has not been a continuous practice. There's been 700 years of emptiness. And there's a lot of people that are trying to make this link, but this link is replica at best. And then it really is a Japanese product in terms of the characteristics in which we can all consider matcha nowadays. Doesn't mean it won't always be the case. I think China could have a very interesting matcha renaissance where they lean into local cultivars, local production styles, and start producing things that taste very delicious that are not trying to replicate a Japanese product. So Zongjun, you were here the last 2 years consecutively, Canton Fair, meeting different vendors. What were some of the biggest differences between the
Oh,
matcha scene here in China 2 years ago and now?
quality.
Quality.
Quality. It's really the quality. Quantity wise, definitely I've been seeing an increase too, but it's the sheer quality of like, because like 2 years ago, there was like no good matcha at all. Like the stigma was very, very well deserved, I would say, for Chinese matcha. But this year, oh my God, Ryan, I don't know. Like some of these products are pretty good.
There was one that blew me away. We recorded a YouTube video, which we're going to publish, and you can see us take the first sip of that sample. It costs $90 a kilo. It is the best cost to quality matcha ratio I've ever had in my life. And it tasted very much like a Japanese product.
Yeah.
Tasted very much like a good Japanese product.
Yeah.
This would sell for $400 a kilo in Japan.
Easily, easily.
I was shocked. And apparently for that particular supplier, who was Itoen and a couple other Japanese companies are trying to get that material.
Yeah, they're trying to procure from them. The course material too. They were trying to buy tencha from these people.
And honestly, if they brought it into Japan, it would make delicious matcha.
Yes.
And no one would honestly be able to tell the difference. It was that good.
Yeah, very interesting. So, and also like they don't necessarily own any gardens. They're from the Guangdong province, which is, predominantly a green tea and hongcha, like a black tea production region. So what they're doing is that they're aggregating all of these good materials that they source from different provinces inside China. I think their main source is from Zhejiang, and they also source some from Guizhou. But the really good one that we end up trying today was from Zhejiang, predominantly.
That's right. And a lot of these places are very open about who they supply. People are like, oh, yeah, we're a Starbucks supplier, or oh, we supply AT. So one interesting artifact of sourcing anything in China, I would not expect any degrees of confidentiality. But with that comes actually pretty radical transparency. Everyone is also like,
super
yeah,
transparent.
you ask how many days shaded, cultivar, what the practices are,
processing method,
when they set it up,
milling method, if they own the tea garden or not. They were like being pretty honest about all the information.
There was very low levels of caginess. And when they didn't know, they just said, yeah, I don't know.
Yep.
Just very honest and very helpful in answering all of these questions. And the other thing that was shocking is that half the vendors were also selling tencha. So the ability is more and more people have get the hardware to mill matcha fresh. The cost to quality ratio in some of this Chinese tencha, it's much, much easier than buying tencha in Japan. Trying to buy tencha in Japan is like pulling teeth. Might even be more painful, to be honest. It is a weird request, and it's very difficult to get. It's difficult to buy matcha, let alone tencha, from a lot of these places. So it's a bit crazy.
Yeah, it's I would say this kind of landscape and environment to do business. It's really a healthy soil for a specialty product or specialty movement to take place. It really kind of unleash a lot of freedom and remove a lot of inertia to make innovations. The pain that we all experienced in Japan kind of really suffocated a lot of passion for a lot of people to try to do something new.
Yeah. Like if you're trying to source like interesting single cultivar, single origin tea anywhere in like the Uji trademark region of Narashiga, Mie, or Kyoto Prefecture, right? And like you just see Uji matcha, Uji matcha, Uji matcha, it all falls under the name. It's like ceremonial. And then you try to learn anything about the product, and it's either proprietary or oh, they won't tell you, but our tea master makes it taste the same every year, and it's his domain, not mine. And yes, it is almost always a hit. And like they just don't tell you anything about the product. It's very hard.
Mm.
Very few farmers are willing to be that transparent. And typically it's a lot of trust that you have to earn. But here it's the default. It could be really rich soil for a specialty matcha movement, finding really high quality tencha. So high quality that the Japanese are interested in. The large companies like Itoan are apparently very interested.
Yeah, and a lot of these vendors, they're really willing to work with you to explore other potentials, like what kind of cultivar you want to do, or what kind of shading base you want to do, what kind of fertilizers you want to, end up being applied to the teas. The level of freedom is very high. Ryan and I have done a batch of tea experiment in a place called Ximen before. It's just so easy to work with the farmers to do experiments, to tweak the parameters, and and also just to start it. Like you don't really need to pitch or sell this idea very hard to people.
Yeah, they're looking for
They're
opportunities.
looking for opportunity.
The domestic tea consumption in China is actually falling. Like they're looking for export markets.
Yeah, the other very interesting phenomenon that we saw here today is that all of these matcha producing area or new matcha producing area in China has all been historically famous green tea production area.
Yeah.
Green tea is not selling in China. Everyone's trying to switch to tencha or matcha. There is this one vendor from a specific county that we visit today, and they were telling me that the local government invested 500 million RMB into turning into the entire county, switching from green tea, from GuiCha to matcha.
That is almost $100 million US dollars. It's like 80 million US dollars invested in tencha, and something like 1 million hectares of tea producing of new tencha fields.
That's right.
From Xianxi.
From Shanxi, yeah.
Like a region most people have never heard of for matcha. Typically you hear Guizhou or Zhejiang. But
well, Shanxi is the province for Xi'an, but that specific area, I think it's called Pingling. I've never heard of Pingling, to be honest. But yeah, apparently they're doing a lot of tencha.
The number of provinces making tencha was like enormous to me. Can you go through the full list?
Oh my God. Well, we have Hubei, we have Hunan, we have Zhejiang, we have Jiangsu, we have Guangdong, we have Shanxi, we have Yunnan. What did I miss? Fujian, 8. That's already 8.
Wow.
I believe there are more.
And many different cultivars. We've heard a lot of Japanese cultivars like Yabukita, Okumidori, and then a lot of Chinese ones, specifically Longjing 43. What were some of the other ones?
There's a Zhecha, Zhejiang Tea Institute cultivar. There is this Echa number 10, which is a Hubei Tea Institute cultivar. And Fuding Da Bai. White tea cultivar, which is predominantly being used in Guangzhou for GuiCha.
And that was we had some Fuding tencha that we bought and are milling fresh on our machine. And we bought, I don't know what we bought. We're using it just for testing. It was $29 a kilo when we bought it. It tastes terrible. Fuding tencha from the Guizhou people was excellent. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was really good.
Excellent. Almost no bitterness. Super green. Very tasty. Had a slight creaminess and umami. It was actually unlike any Japanese matcha I have ever had.
The tea here is more, I would say, more tea-like.
Yeah, more body, a little more tannic, but also more fragrant. And then some of these samples too just are super creamy and umami. And what's very interesting is also the amount of cross cultural learnings. One of the teams that was supplying some of the best matcha that we had that was sourcing from Zhejiang, their entire team went to Uji. They learned how to whisk matcha. They did some tea tours, right? Like there's a lot of cross cultural context and learning going on
Mm,
in a pretty direct way, I would
yeah.
say.
And obviously, there are Japanese here too. A lot of these very large farms and gardens, and some of the most high quality, the highest quality ones, are directly Japanese controlled,
Yeah.
um, which is also very interesting. They are spending a lot of investment here into expanding their productions. And I think we have no confirmed evidence, but what we have heard is that a lot of these tencha eventually gets funneled back to Japan and might get end up labeled as Wuji matcha.
Wow,
We don't know, but
we basically have confirmed evidence. I mean, all of these producers love to brag that they export even to Japan. Why? I mean, the quality of a lot of this material is just so good. And what was really crazy is the price. So the most expensive matcha, Chinese matcha I've ever heard of, wholesale price, was about 300 or maybe it was 330 US dollars a kilo. Here, I think the most expensive one we saw today was 150 US a kilo. There was some fantastic, just fantastic material that was at about 100 US a kilo. And there's also a lot hovering around 50 to 60 US dollars a kilo. Um,
mm,
I This is like where the future of cafe matcha is. I honestly think Chinese matcha is getting so good that it would be irresponsible as a business owner to your own bottom line and to provide a tasty product consumers like to not investigate Chinese matcha suppliers. The price to quality ratio is probably about 2x as good as to what you can get in Japan right now at a similar price point for the quality it's delivering in the cup. And I'm only talking about flavor here. The organoleptic, the sensory differences are really about on par with each other. They're the same. There's almost no difference
yeah.
for a
And
lot of
honestly,
these
you're probably just buying, the same thing in Japan
that gets imported
that
from
gets
China.
imported from China.
So if you're just serving matcha lattes, it's crazy the quality that we're seeing here from all of these vendors. If anyone listening is interested, we're happy to help do some sourcing. But for the value that you can get between 60 and 150 US dollars a kilo, and much more readily available supply from much more transparent companies, and not to mention companies that are really set up and designed for exportation. There is domestic market for matcha in China is very new. It is growing. And I'd like to talk about that a bit in this episode. But these companies are set up for export. They're optimizing for exportable quality matcha in a way that, the best Japanese matcha farms, you cannot import it to the EU or you can barely import it into the US because the pesticide residues are way too high. The best matcha in Japan like lives domestic in that market and it's very difficult to export. Not until recently have they been starting to make pretty major investments in having pesticide residue level tea that can go to places outside that. So that's another, China's kind of starting from a blank slate.
Yeah.
It's because there's not a huge demand. But even here, actually, in the past 2 years, I think I've spent about 8 or 9 months in and out of China the last 2 years and just seeing it everywhere. Even the local
Oh,
Seven
yeah.
Eleven
It's
is
quite
pushing it
visible.
hard.
It's quite visible. Well, my guess is that they probably are experiencing a oversupply issue because for a lot of companies, they only are being allocated for a certain quota every year to export tea outside of China. So if they end up eating all of the quota, they have to find other ways to sell their tea, which I think that is the reason a lot of these factories and brands are turning back to the domestic. And this is like quite visible from a consumer's perspective. 2 or 3 years ago, there's really no matcha in China. Like
The
it's
local McDonald's has an affogato, a matcha affogato. That is a crazy sentence. I remember learning about an affogato for the first time like 10 years ago with coffee, and I thought, wow, like I feel so sophisticated for knowing that this exists. And now it's at the McDonald's in Guangzhou.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And you also see a lot of like more boutique or specialty places being popped out. And one of the best-selling product in the past year in China is this coconut water matcha made by Manner Coffee.
It's very good.
It is very good. And they have been advertising using Guizhou matcha.
So it's like a
It's
more local
entirely
product.
local, yeah. So that was pretty interesting. Like the idea of like place of origin is growing in the domestic market. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting future we are seeing here.
We ask a lot of questions when we go up there. And one of the more interesting things that we've been learning is just the way the matcha is milled. So almost all of the product is ball mill. Or jet milled is another common one. There are a few factories that are doing ishi. Some are even importing ishi from Japan, especially some producers from Hubei, which is the province of Wuhan. And the other thing that's really different here that you don't ever see Japanese talk about is the sieve level. A lot of these manufacturers say, it can pass through a 100 or a 1000 level sieve in the way that it is marketed. So there's a lot of post milling sifting going on, which until very recently we learned also happens in Japan for a lot of Japanese manufacturers. But there is a level of refinement after milling to remove any of these larger, bolder particles, which was definitely not on our radar until relatively recent.
Even for some of the higher quality matcha, they do sieve, apparently.
Yeah, before they do any level of packaging. So we learned something that was we kept hearing, and if you read online, so there's the largest matcha company in the world is Chinese. They're called GuiCha, Tea from Guangzhou, specifically in a town called Tongren, which is the matcha capital of China. And we have heard from some people that the total production is about the same amount as what all of Japan produces in 1 year, which is about 4,000 tons. Online, there's some mixed numbers. I saw down to like 1,000 tons. I've also seen 2,000 tons produced by GuiCha. And now that we are here and we were able to talk to them, they did indeed confirm 4,000
Yeah,
tons,
it's a crazy number.
which is the entire volume that is produced in the country of Japan in 1 year. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. And you see a lot of these other places are also investing heavily in expanding their production. I cannot fathom how the production will be in the next few years coming out from China. Maybe it's good that they are turning back to the domestic market because it will be a very interesting future that the market gets flushed with decent quality matcha coming out of China. Like, how would that impact a lot of the producers in Japan? Would be a big question mark.
Yeah, I think what the B2B side would get crushed, to be honest.
Yeah,
Unless you're like specifically and want to source a Japanese product, but for everywhere else where your consumers just don't care and they want matcha and the same health benefits, probably honestly lower pesticide residues than what you can find in Japan. The Chinese product is way cheaper and going to be way better and a way more stable supply than what you can find in Japan. And I think the Japan at the high end, I think there's going to be a big polarization. I think if you're doing interesting work, like hand picking, interesting cultivars. Like here, we didn't see any Uji and Kari or Norino or Asahi. Like, you don't get any of these luxury cultivars. I think those are just going to be worth even more. But like the average Yabukita or the average like Okumidori that's very industrially produced in Kagoshima, I don't know.
yeah, it's still very new, even for the Chinese. This whole wave of matcha bloom. It's not that the Chinese do not have expensive cultivar. It's just that they don't have expensive cultivar for matcha yet. And all of these new places has only been producing matcha for like 3 or 5 years. So it's still super new for this entire country to pivot into matcha. Like I would say that if this market persists and grows in the future, that China sees it as a stable market to worth invest into. I bet there will be more expensive and higher quality cultivars emerge that are Chinese in China.
That are suitable for shaded cultivation.
Exactly.
Right? Like when you shade a plant, there's a lot of biological processes that you're disrupting. And that's one of the reasons actually why matcha from Uji is so good. Are all of these cultivars are specifically bred for shaded cultivation and having really high chlorophyll content, really high L-theanine and amino acid content, where you're also not killing the plants. And all of these Uji cultivars and Kyoto cultivars are specifically bred for those exact climate conditions.
Yeah.
We say terroir generally doesn't matter because matcha is shaded, number one. Number two, it's heavily fertilized. And number three, it's processed an insane amount. So like the terroir doesn't impact the flavor that much, but it does impact what plants can grow healthy where, right? There are, even in Uji with climate change, Asahi, which came from Uji Zairai, suffers from a lot of heat damage because the summers are just getting hotter and hotter.
Yeah.
So when it comes to climate, cultivars do thrive in certain environments.
Yeah. The other factor is fertilizer absorption rate.
Yeah.
So a lot of these cultivars in China are just not that used to this high amount of fertilizer being applied to them. So I've heard that there are some local cultivars in Enshi are suffering from, they call it root burning.
Root burning.
Effect, because too much fertilizer being applied to the soil burns the root of the plants.
Interesting. This is what Suji-san was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
The concept of over-fertilizing a plant.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of art to be explored, even just on fertilizers.
I mean, that is the really, really crazy thing, right? These producers, at best, have a decade of experience. Most of them, 3 to 5 years of experience. This is such a new industry in China. It's really hard, which is such an exciting opportunity. And it's primarily for export and will be so cool. And actually, I think everyone listening, this is the future market. What could be really fertile soil for a specialty matcha movement, specialty mocha movement, is showing them, yeah, you know what? We are willing to pay $200 for a fantastic product or $300 for a fantastic product. It will create the incentive cycles for people to start doing way more research on breeding, way more research on, or even just cultivar selection, cultivar arbitrage. There's probably many dozens and dozens of very suitable cultivars for shaded cultivation that already exist in China.
Totally agree.
Just no one has made the investment yet because this industry is brand new.
Yeah. And the other great thing about the matcha scene or the matcha landscape in China is that there's no cultural baggage. You can literally do anything here. And people are so flexible to work with you. To just show them the profit or a vision, like they're willing to work with you to do like whatever you want. And like no one's gonna come out and criticize you. Yeah, one very interesting quote that we got from one of the vendors we end up visiting today at Canton Fair is 万物皆可磨. Anything can be milled. They were milling, oolong, hongcha, black tea, even pu'er. We end up touching some of the other non-tencha powder, and one of them is hojicha. They roast their own hojicha too, which had a very unique pale color that's different from some other hojicha powder that we saw in Japan. But no one's gonna criticize you of doing things wrong.
That's
you can literally create your new culture.
Yeah, yeah, really nice blank slate market. It's the other thing. So there's a lot of foreign buyers here. Actually, most of this fair are foreign buyers from what probably every country in the world or pretty close to it. Pretty interesting mix of people and different cultures. And the number of times I heard someone go up to one of these booths, is this ceremonial grade? And they get the same answer every time. Yes, it's like, oh, this is an easy answer. And then that, just becomes other people's reality. That's how flexible these definitions are. It's completely made up. It's being made up here. It's being made up in Japan. It is this weird thing that lives in people's minds.
Being made up on time. I think we saw like 7 different grading systems.
Yeah, that was the other weird thing. Everyone's using their own grading system. We had A's, 1A through 7A plus. And there was an 8A bag in the back. We saw E, H, and something else. GuiCha people had a really weird grading system that had some acronym I had never seen before.
Oh, it's code. It's blind code,
Okay, some blind code.
some blind code system. And then we saw like premium, premium plus, premium plus plus.
We saw a lot of matcha number one, matcha number two. I mean, weirdly enough, matcha number two is typically the higher quality one. I asked, "Can I get a sample of matcha number one?" They're like, this is the lower quality one, right? I was like, "Oh no," and a lot
That's
of
funny.
stuff is labeled for EU export as well.
Yeah, I mean, this fair is for exportation.
The other thing that's interesting is the MLQ. The MLQs actually range pretty enormously from one container containing 10 metric tons all the way down through no MLQ.
Super easy to work with.
Uh,
But for the MOQ constrained orders, it's a one-stop solution. They help you get through the customs. They provide all the paperwork, zero headache. And for the low to no MOQ ones, sometimes they are even just in the process of applying for a exportation license. So maybe you need more brain power to try to figure out how to get the tea into your country.
brain power and high pain tolerance first figuring out those export requirements.
But that's the other interesting scene that we saw in Canton Fair is that there's this array of vendors helping import and export and logistics.
So many. Any country
So
you're
many of them.
interested. Russia, Iran. It's and a lot of them like are very heavily specialized. Pretty crazy. So Zongjun, what is your impression just as a Chinese person? You grew up here in Guangzhou until the end of middle school and then went to the States. But like, what's your impression? And you're also a cha ren, a tea person. We've both been really into gongfu cha and Chinese tea and Taiwanese tea and Korean tea for such a long time. But this is a Chinese person seeing this very like new thing kind of develop because we've gotten so much context in Japan
Mm.
and are trying to learn this context here in China. And like, what's your take?
Yeah, I would say that I guess the largest difference between tea culture that I've experienced in China versus other places is how open-minded people are. Not just in terms of willing to try new things, but also like adopting new practices and culture. So there's this concept from Confucius that they were basically saying that uh, 礼失问事也. So if you lose your manner, you go seek from your neighbors. And this has been true for generations across different dynasties because like the Chinese culture really changed so much in the past few thousand years, from Han Dynasty to Tang Dynasty to Song Dynasty to Ming Dynasty to Qing Dynasty. Every dynasty has its actually very unique culture, and there is this habit of destroying the old culture. It's culture revolution is not a new thing here. Every dynasty has this tendency of kind of destroying some of the old manners or old rituals to prove the legitimacy or re-establish a authority to kind of seize control and kind of establish a new regime that really impact a lot of these culture that are being practiced by the literati through time. And every time, you lose the weight of, let's say, documenting a certain ritual or lose the documentation of a certain genre of art. Frequently, some of the Chinese literates or scholars from the old time, they will go seek documentation from Korean or even Vietnamese.
Documenting their own their culture,
Their
own
culture, basically. And this has been a thing for many, many years.
It's like they're reappropriating their own culture through some discovery process.
Yeah, a renaissance, a restoration. Basically. So, like seeing matcha being rejuvenated in China once again, I think this is just another cycle of history.
Yeah, and instead of looking to Korea or to looking to Vietnam, they're looking to Japan and the commercial success of Japanese matcha.
Yeah.
And then getting more interested about their own former dead tea culture, Song Dynasty matcha.
Or it's really not dead. There's this concept called the Sinosphere. It's all of these cultures who has been received historical influence from China that, there's this part of China that, getting very well preserved by them, that the Chinese are just rediscovering what has been lost through time, which I think is a very beautiful thing.
Yeah. What do you think the Japanese would think if they came to Canton Fair and saw this? Or what would the spectrum of reactions be?
Oh my God, I don't know. I mean, it really depends on the region, right, Ryan? So, like, I would not necessarily see someone from, let's say, Uji being, too willing to work with people here, but, like in places from Izumo or from Yame or from Kagoshima. I mean, we actually met surprisingly a lot of people in Japan that has such an open-minded mentality in, trying and seeing and praising new
Ooh,
things. Even in Wuji, we met, this farmer from Baisa Nakamura that they were just so eager to let us to try this fantastic new Chinese matcha that he discovered.
I think he would be super interested to like taste and learn about all these Chinese
I think
cultivars
so.
being made into matcha. Like some of these cultivars you had never even heard of. Uh, having so much context with Chinese tea.
Yeah, I think that's really one thing that the Japanese can learn from the Chinese is this, I would say, open-mindedness and this optimism
Yes,
in innovation instead of framing everything in a very
Arm
pessimistic or you know
armchair.
or negative way. Like a lot of these you know legacy brands, like for example Maruku Koyama, and were framing this whole matcha shortage or this matcha boom as a bad thing.
Yeah, they really took a victim stance, which would really surprise me considering there had so much demand for their matcha that they couldn't produce enough. I have trouble being intellectually honest with myself about how they are the victim in the situation.
Yeah, yet everything is framed in like a negative way, like almost like this boom is hurting their business.
Yeah, which is like exactly the opposite.
Yeah, but it's also like very regional. Like we don't see this kind of complaint coming out from like places like Fukuoka or Kagoshima.
Well,
Like they seized the
I mean,
opportunity.
in Mariku's defense, they were a victim and they are continued to be victims of a lot of fraud because
That's
they're
true. That's
so
true.
popular that there's a lot of counterfeit. So, I mean, this, I think they have a total complaint and they are a victim of fraud that's being committed mostly in China. But, I agree. There's a lot of negative framing and a lot of like not intellectually like honest arguments, even on Instagram. I hate the armchairness. There was a matcha producer in Wazuka that was commenting and trying to correct someone on their reel about Japanese matcha, and they're like, "Yeah, it's like champagne, but it's not like champagne. Because champagne has to be grown in Champagne, and matcha has to be grown in Japan. But we as Japanese did a bad job protecting that. But like, what does that have to do with like anything? It's not champagne. It's not protected. Like you can say that you want it to be protected, but you cannot say that matcha is like champagne because it's not. like it's there's no argument making you're not making an argument there.
Well, I
Like
would say someone's vision of what matcha should be. Uh,
yeah, but you can say that like yeah, okay, like this all DOP olive oil is protected and this is it's like that, but it's not. Okay, it's not.
mm.
What does it have to do with anything? It's just not an intellectually honest complaint.
Or not intellectually constructive or inspiring.
Yeah, just like literally someone just being very grumpy on the internet, which I guess is not unique to just Japan either. But, I find these arguments just dumb, right? What we just tasted was delicious. And a lot of it is very Japanese inspired. Some of it was so good that Japanese companies are trying to import it to Japan. And we tasted it. It's in the cup. The cup doesn't lie.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you care about? Do you want it to be produced in Japan to have be double the price and not taste as good? Like, what are you putting first? The flavor, the culture? Where are these incentive loops?
Consumer
And
experience.
it's different for everyone. We care about the consumer and we care about the product. We care about what we can learn about the product. Like we are much more interested in broader tea culture and contemporary tea culture and inclusive tea culture where there is some level of like, yeah, let's try it. Or like, why is it good? How is it good? right? Like getting bogged down on all of these details about, the exact borders of where something is grown. Yeah, that's great if, you're trying to
Well,
protect
yeah, I mean,
exclusive culture.
yeah, or cultural preservation. But I would say we are more interested in new culture creation or like seeing culture as a living thing.
Indeed. It's a living thing.
And it should be a living thing. Like preserving culture is great. Like today, even today's new culture will be the old culture for tomorrow. And there will be people preserving us,
And
probably.
even this Wazuka tea farmer that's complaining, there was no tencha produced in Wazuka until the 20th century. And there is no history of that in Wazuka.
And honestly, like all of these tencha practices that we are seeing today in Japan are pretty new. Like all these tencha ovens,
Tencha
cultivars, tencha processing methods,
synthetic shading,
synthetic fertilizers, or like composite fertilizers, or the idea of fertilizing with different ingredients.
Or the second harvest. A lot of Japanese matcha second harvest. No one was doing second harvest matcha until like the 80s. Also, very new. Actually, you could argue that like a very large percentage of Japanese matcha is not authentic at all to what the tradition is of producing matcha in Japan.
Yeah. Like it's not really that new. It's not really that older than a lot of other matcha producing areas.
Actually, we don't know a single producer in all of Japan that's making matcha and tencha the way that they were 100 years ago, which is not something you can say about China. There are still a lot of producers and living artisanal crafts of Chinese tea production and Chinese tea producing areas that have not modernized. You can actually get a truly handmade product in like Guishan, for example.
Predominantly in Yunnan, but I agree.
Yunnan, a lot. I mean, this is where if you want to taste true heritage crafted tea, you don't go to Japan and look at matcha, because there's not a single one doing like Hanzu shaded, hand processed Zairai tea. I don't know anyone doing that. I don't think there's anyone
not
doing
only just that. You have to steam it in a wood box, and you have to fertilize it with human manure.
Human feces, yeah.
That would be the most authentic, I would say.
And no one's doing it. Everyone switched to cultivars. Very few people are doing Hanzu shading. And no one is doing hand processing. Right? Literally does not exist in this category. It is dead. It is a dead art. No one's doing it.
It's probably totally fine. And honestly, I think the current version probably tastes
better.
Yeah, it tastes better.
So it literally doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter. And, it's also a adaptive culture that I will argue that it's just not feasible anymore to do all those practices nowadays in Japan. Like the labor shortage and all of these things, that's just making all these old practices not viable. Like if you were to restore this old culture ever in Japan, it will just be a big show. Like it will not be part of a sustainable culture anymore.
And you could argue the most authentic matcha comes from a living culture. And that living culture adapts, it changes, it improves, it embraces innovation, which it has done.
Yeah.
I think honestly, Japanese tea culture has done such a good job at culturally appropriating itself and foiling in on itself, selling the old traditional ways, the old traditions, all of these practices of the past. But really, it is one continuous evolution and living culture. Constantly, this looking backwards of just folding this history in on itself to sell what is indeed a very modern product. But it is the most authentic version of the thing.
Yeah.
When you can taste the 10th generation or 16 generations of blending skill or farming, where they have changed and are not only doing methods that are honestly not commercially viable.
Or not good.
Or, yeah, a lot of them probably just didn't taste any good.
Yeah, they are like one very inspiring thing that I keep hearing. I first heard it from a Yunnan tea farmer, one of the actually oldest family in Yiwu that has been continuously making pu'er tea. And one Korean farmer and actually a handful of Japanese farmer is that my tea this year is better than my tea last year, most likely, because I'm more experienced too. I'm making better teas. And hopefully I'm making better teas than my ancestors or my previous generations, because we all learn from each other, because we keep learn from our past experience.
Percent. And I think Chinese matcha in its current environment is only going to get better and better and better. And the speed of change and the open mindedness to new technologies is much more fluid here in China. And I think it's very fertile soil for a specialty matcha movement. And it's just interesting. What's going on here is interesting. And if you find it like to be threatening to what's going on in Japan, they should innovate. Like, they should change. Like, I don't think this is definitely not a zero sum game that is going on. But if China can produce something that has fewer pesticides, more delicious, and more transparent and more innovative for, whether or not it's breeding on the cultivar side or different fertilizer recipes or different types of just tencha processing will lead to a much more rich and dynamic future. That's the future I want to live in, not, what some 400-year-old institution that's barely changed in a generation thinks is good. That's stale. That's not what's fresh. So, all of these things will cohabitate, but very exciting, very nice to have this new member enter the party.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Be nice to see this kind of trend being blossoming in other areas too. I want to see this happening in Thailand. I want to see this happening in Korea. I want to see this happening in India, in all of the tea producing regions. Matcha cultivation can also be a global movement too, not just consumption.
100%. So let us know. What do you think? What are your opinions about Chinese matcha? Have you had a good one? Have you had an experience that really reset your expectations? So do let us know. And if you enjoyed this, please consider sharing it with a friend, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you in the future.
Take care.